Devin, Chris Curtis, Rob Bradford in for Greg this morning. How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. Getting ready for this game on Sunday. Just sort of off the top, what does Teddy Bridgewater do that's different? Has there been any change in your preparation given Tua in being in concussion protocol for the game?
Yeah, I think, for the most part, it's been the same. I would say one of the tougher things is, he was due to start the Jets game, but then, after the first play was out, a lot of the film we got is really the Minnesota game, but Skyler started that game. So, I think we can only go off like what we saw in the preseason. And then for the most part, when he stepped in as a backup, it didn't seem like they had kind of totally different offense. It's really the same offense. And, one of the biggest adjustments is just, you're dealing with a righty quarterback instead of a lefty quarterback. So some of the things that might be more comfortable when you watch film of, them going to Tua's left or right, will be vice versa with Teddy. But it seems like, they're going to run the same offense. And I'm sure coming into the week knowing that Teddy will start, they'll have some different wrinkles or things that he might like more. And we'll have to just adjust and be ready for that on Sunday.
Devin, just curious on Tua, this would be his third concussion of the season that's been diagnosed. How much is that on your mind when you take the field? Do you have to totally tune out the concern of what concussions can do? How do you sort of manage that? And is that something that your family is concerned about with you still playing in the NFL?
Yeah, you just go play, man. I've always been told the more you think about getting hurt is usually when you do get hurt. So I think for all of us, you just go out and play. And I think when you find yourself in that situation, whether in a protocol or anything like that, you just got to be smart. You got to think about your future. You got to think about all of those things that I think if you don't have someone in your family or, someone you're close with, telling you that it's easy to be caught up in the moment of, playing for playoffs and playing for all the different things that we love to play, for in the business side of football. You got to really just forget about all those things. And my family's been great with that. Of the two times I've had concussions, of just making sure my safety was at the top of the list and talking to me. And, my wife always tells me now, you're one concussion away from it. It doesn't matter how you feel, you're going to be done. So it's an aspect I think that we all have to deal with, and each guy kind of goes about it differently. But I just think the most important thing is, the player's health when you find yourself in that situation.
Devin, it's always great. It's so great that you come on every week because you give the perspective that we simply don't have. And we're sitting here talking for all week long, talking about the different things that we see in perception. And one of the perceptions is about sort of the assistant coaching construct. And you just tell me, are we making too much of this whole thing about how the Patriots designate assistant coaches in terms of titles, in terms of moving guys around, in terms of, moving one guy from one side of the ball to the other side of the ball? How do you view how the Patriots assistant coach construct is compared to maybe other guys or other teams around the league?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit tougher for me. Obviously I haven't heard much of what you guys were talking about. But I think for me, I've only been here, so I don't really know from an NFL standpoint of what it looks like on other teams. But I would say from a player standpoint, you come in and you just want to be coached hard. You want to be able to rely on somebody to know whatever the aspect of your offense, defense, or special teams, to know that stuff and be able to get dialogue going back and forth, for you, so you fully understand what's being asked of you and how to go out and execute whatever your assignment is. And I think that's the key thing. I don't think it doesn't matter what you did last year or what you did before. Is can you deliver and get me those things that I need as a player? And I think that's always the situation when it comes down to playing. And I think for all of us in this business, players, coaches, it's always kind of a 1-year evaluation of what it looked like the year before. How well did you do? Did you do a good job? Did you not do a good job? And I think that's the world we live in. Each year as a player, you sit there when the season's over and you go, all right, my coach is going to grade me and do all these things. And that's probably going to determine, if I'm back on that team, if I'm, get what kind of contract I get next year. So I think across the board, this business is a result-driven business. So, for us, we got to figure out how to play well Sunday to give ourselves a chance the next week.
Devin, just one more on last week's game. When you saw the block that Mack threw on Eli Apple, what was your reaction?
I didn't see it until after the game, and I think that's something that obviously he dealt with and talked about, and the league did what they had to do. So it's one of those things that it happens. You got to kind of move past it. I think it helps. He addressed it, and for the rest of us, just let him address that. And I don't have anything to do with the block or what happened. So I'll let whatever he spoke about kind of be what it is.
All right, what nothing to do with Mac, but your old friend Kyle Van Noy went on the Pat McAfee show yesterday.
Uh-oh.
And he is talking smack. So he, not really, but he said he was discussing the differences between Brandon Staley, his current head coach with the LA Chargers, and his time with Bill Belichick. And he expressed a sentiment that Bill's communication was good with Kyle Van Noy, but that with Brandon Staley, he's communicating directly to all the players. He's able to reach everyone.
He has all the favorites in the phone.
Right. He has all the favorites in the phone. He knows everybody's phone number. I guess Bill doesn't know everybody's phone number, but he said that Bill doesn't communicate as much to everybody, that there are people on the team that he doesn't get along with. Is that something that you've experienced, or is Kyle Van Noy just full of crap?
I guess it would mean, like, when he says doesn't communicate, is he talking? You got to realize Van Noy is a very make me feel good kind of guy. So, like, he'll love for a coach to text him, like, happy birthday on his birthday in March. So when his birthday shows up in March, like, I'm sure, like, Staley might shoot him a text. And, like, if he means, like, that kind of communication, like, we're not getting that from Bill. You're not going to get, like, a reminder text about your anniversary that's coming up. But as far as, like, communicating with the team, like, what you need to do, as a player, football-wise, like, now, we get that. Like, that's what it is here, and I think each coach is different. I have some friends that play on other teams, and they talk about how they talk to their coach all the time, text messages. Like, that's not what we have here. I think if you need to communicate with Bill, I've never heard a player say, like, hey, I reached out to Bill, and he never called me back or texted me back. He doesn't like me. Like, I've never heard that here, so. But I think, again, each player's perspective and their experience is different. I've been here for 13 years, so to hear me speak negatively or think things are bad is kind of crazy, because you would say, well, why'd you stay here for 13 years? Where other guys, they were here for a period of time, whether they liked it or didn't like it, it didn't work out for them to stay. So I think you're going to have a different experience of, why it even ended up that way. So I talk to Kyle all the time, so I didn't even know he said that. I was talking to him yesterday, so now I'm probably gonna get on him later today and say, is he mad he didn't get a text for his birthday in March?
Yeah, make sure it's positive.
Yeah, yes, but it's led to a discussion, and this discussion has come up before, which I personally have pushed aside about the remember Lane Johnson. Oh, they don't have fun. Well, you have fun winning. That's when you have fun. It's when you win, and. So, but we look at the way that the new generation is, a new generation of athletes, a new generation of football players. You have seen a few generations come and go throughout that locker room. As you said, you've been there. So do you think that the youngest generation that is coming up needs to have the sort of Brandon Staley way of doing things? Or is it still okay? Does the Bill Belichick way still work with all generations?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that year by year you have to figure out. I think for guys who are a little older, you kind of see everything is blended together, like this generation, that generation. But, from, I would say, especially over the last couple years that I've been in NFL, each team is different, and it changes year by year of what you have in the locker room, how players how they respond to different teaching techniques and different things like that. So to say that, like, Bill can't be like he was when I got here in 2010. And it almost feels like you can't kind of be how you were maybe 3 years ago, with things just changing and how people receive information and what it takes to motivate them. So, yeah, I would say for every coach, you have to continue to be ready to change and adapt to whatever's in the locker room. And I think, from my time when I first got here till now, I would say we've had that. Like, there's a lot of things that, I see now that I'm like, man, when I first got here, I end up one of those guys. When I got here, we didn't do it like, so it's always, I think that's just the evolution of anything. Anytime you're in a business where there's a lot of change all the time, you got to be ready to change and adapt with it as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Can you give an example of sort of how Bill has evolved? I think that you have, he has this foundation on how to treat a team, how to treat players, and that's how, obviously, for the most part, has been really, really successful. But can you give an example, maybe even a very, very small one, of how Bill has sort of evolved over the last in the year time with the Patriots?
I just think piggybacking off even what KV was talking about, I think the individual conversations that go on now for players is way different than when I got here. As much as I see him just grabbing a guy and talking to a guy, whereas I felt like when I first got here, it was, everything you were going to hear about your performance or anything was going to happen right in the squad meeting, and, everyone was going to hear it. I would say that doesn't happen as much as, pulling guys aside and saying, here, this is what you need to do, or this is what I saw. I would say is more of a thing that I think works better now, than when I first got in the NFL. It seems like guys respond better to that than when I first got here, an hour squad meeting where it felt like everybody was getting, I know you guys have heard years past former players talk about being in those meetings and going down the list of hearing what we need to do and hearing who did what. And, I would say it's not as much as that as when I first got here.
The last thing, did you play baseball, Devin?
I did not. I'm actually a terrible baseball player.
Oh, okay. Well, this question is going to be stupid then, because Deion Sanders came on another podcast and basically said, he asked, which is the hardest sport you played, and which is the easiest? And he said football's the easiest, baseball's the hardest. So basically he's saying it's easy to play football for Deion Sanders, but I guess it's not the same.
That's a Marcus Jones question.
There you go. All right.
Closest thing to I shouldn't put that much pressure on a rookie. That's not right.
Well, Devin, greatly appreciate your time. As always, Happy New Year. Good luck this weekend against the Dolphins, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
Thank you. All right, guys. Have a good one.